Okay, this is Stef again, lowercase S-T-E-F. This is going to be my early years, I guess. My story, I think, is quite profound, especially to me, and maybe it's not for other people, but I do think it is, because I've had several people that have told me I needed to write a book, or I needed to write this down, I need to preserve this, I need to tell other people. And so, for a while, I was held it so privately, because it was just so, what's the word I'm looking for? It was so intimate to me. But at the same time, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I couldn't not say what was on my heart, because I was bursting to find other people that were similar. But so as far as my early years, I grew up in the 70s. It was a different time, of course, as it is now. I grew up with 3 brothers and in a neighborhood of all boys. I didn't have the first girl move into my neighborhood till I believe I was 11. Now, I'm not certain about that detail, but it wasn't like I was a very young child. So, of course, I was tomboyish, because that was the only way that you could survive as a girl with a neighborhood of boys. But we were living in a very small town in Missouri. And like I said, it was a different time. People didn't lock their doors, their car doors, their house at night. You frequently slept with the big door open, and you had the screen door to let air in, box fans in the windows, no air conditioning. And kids frequently left in the morning, and they didn't come back until maybe lunch, dark. When one of the neighbor moms would flip on a porch light, we would realize that it was night. So then it was time to go home. I do remember a time, at least one summer, where my mom would even ring the bell to let us know it was time to come home, because the little neighborhood we lived in, it was actually, there were railroad tracks, and there were woods, and there were all kinds of places where kids could go play. And so I wouldn't say we were very supervised, because it was just a different time. Kids live that type of life. You skin your knee, you rub dirt in it, and you went to play. You didn't go home and tell mom. It just was different. And it was a great childhood. It really was. But I can remember, as a very small child, being the only girl, I just never felt that I was loved. And I don't want to say it was anyone's fault. It wasn't my parents' fault. I just don't know if I had the capability to feel that way. And I feel now, it was a very lonely growing up. Though I had lots of friends that were boys, and we played baseball, and we played on the tire swing, and we played, rode our bikes, and I had brothers and things like that, and it wasn't any one that made me feel like that, but I think this is an emptiness that God put in me, and it took me 45 years to realize that it was for a purpose. It really was. It's emotional even now, but I never felt special. I was the only girl, and I wasn't daddy's little girl, and I just didn't feel special. I just felt like another kid that lived in the house, that I just ran off and I went to play, and that was it. And so I just grew up with this emptiness, completely just felt I don't know, just not special, just not anything in particular. And so, I get to the teenage years, and my parents decide to split up, and that was just what happened. I think they tried to stay together as long as they could, but once my dad got out of the house, it was no holds barred. And here I had been searching for this connection with another person. I just wanted to feel loved, and I wanted to feel special. And so by the time I was 13, I was delving into drugs and alcohol and smoking and boys and partying, and just wanting to be included. And of course, when you're in that type of lifestyle, everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to hang out with you and do the whole party drug scene. And so I went from being a really good kid that I just listened to directions. I never got in trouble in school. I made great grades, and I did all the things that one was supposed to do, right? And do all the good things. I was the good girl. A lot of people saw me as, well, all my brothers and I were always considered good kids. We listened. We didn't, when I say that we weren't supervised, it wasn't that we didn't learn rules, but we didn't have to be watched like a hawk, and it was just a different generation. But at 13, everything changed, and I was searching for something. I didn't even know what it was. I just wanted to feel inclusion, and that was what I was seeking, and I never could find it. And so, by the time I was 16, I was pregnant. I got married to somebody that absolutely did not love me. Absolutely was just very abusive. I was just trying to escape. And I say that. I was trying to escape from my home, but he wasn't home either. And it's not that it was so bad at home. I just didn't belong. I just couldn't find a place where I fit anywhere. And so it's just I guess when you're going through puberty and all that stuff, it just makes it more intense. And so I'm looking and I'm searching, and I can't find anything. And so I think the drugs and the alcohol and just all of that just numbed it, and I didn't feel like I had to deal with it. So I got pregnant and I stopped all the craziness. I did get married at 16 to somebody that was way worse than any other situation I'd ever been in, right? But so I really, for my daughter, I really wanted to, I wanted to do good. And I felt like I was doing the best I could with the information that I had. But looking back on it now, there's so many things I wish I could have done differently. But you know what? I can't change it. I regret a lot of things, but I can't change it. So that marriage ended up to be in a situation where I quite literally escaped very, very early one morning, and so he couldn't find me for years. And I got involved in with another man, and we had 2 other additional children, and we stayed together for 10 years. And more emptiness, I just didn't fit. I just didn't belong to anybody. I was never special to anybody. I just was on the outside of my life, and I was the most lonely I'd ever been in my entire life, being around people. And that's a hard place to be. So I survived that. I just survived it. He was not physically abusive or any of those things. It was more of emotional, arm's length. Just never was loved. And I don't think he was capable of it either. So I don't fully blame him. I was searching for something I didn't even know what it was. How could I expect anybody else to know what they needed to give me? So, and just time goes on, and just more of the same, just not feeling included or acceptable. I was searching to be adequate. That's all I wanted, was to be adequate for someone, and I wanted to work so hard just to be that, because I didn't feel like I was even capable of being somebody's something, being special, being whatever. And so I think a lot of time went on, 45 years really of that, but I've always felt like God had a tether to me somehow in my life. Since I remember being 4 years old, very, very specifically, I remember this detail. And I don't know how often it happened, but when we were out playing, and we would just go run around town and do whatever we wanted because we just did that. That's just the generation we had. But I remember being about 4 years old, and we weren't raised in a Christian home, but I remember throughout my adventures during the week, I might come across a church that looked interesting. I didn't understand there were denominations. I just understood that every church was different, much like every single one of my friends. Their homes were different. They had different rules. They had different just way of doing things. And so that's the way I saw churches. It's like church is church, right? But I remember one Sunday morning hearing the church bells go off, and I realized, oh, it's church morning, right? So I ran and I threw a dress on and I just went running up the hill, like running to the first church. And I would just go into church, and I'm thinking now, how weird is that? Like, here is this little girl. Who does she belong to, and who is she with? I didn't tell my parents I went. I just went. And I remember Vacation Bible School. I would just go. I mean, we didn't go to church, but God was drawing me from a very, very early age. And my aunts and uncles went to church, and I would go with them sometimes, especially my one cousin. Her parents took us to church on Sundays, and I spent a great deal of time with her, especially in the summer. But my grandma, my granny, I went to church with her. So I had a taste of a lot of different denominations, and not even understanding that there were denominations. And so that brings me up to the point where here I am. God is drawing me more and more closer to Him, and I love God, and I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Like, I'm a Jesus girl, and I absolutely am grateful. And I was really hard fast on what I understood to be the truth, and there was nobody that was going to convince me anything different. I knew what I knew to be true. And so as I get closer and closer, and I get married, almost 7 years ago, I got married to a very good man. I finally found a partner that, though it's not perfect by any means, he gave me the freedom, I think, to discover God how I need to discover Him, and he never judged me and never tried to convince me otherwise of anything. We had differences in theology, and I thought I knew more. And there were things where, I wouldn't say we argued, but we definitely debated some things. And it was okay because he believed what he believed, and I believed what I believed, and they were much similar, but it wasn't a deal breaker type of thing. We both believed Jesus and all that. But throughout these different stages of my life, especially my adulthood, when I've gotten closer and closer and closer to God, and I've learned things, I started about 5 years ago. I started really praying for discernment. I just kept saying, God, I don't trust myself. I never have. I'm not a person that has a strong belief in myself. I don't want to use the word low self-esteem. I think it's overused, but I certainly didn't have faith in my ability to even recognize what God was telling me. So I was constantly searching for this discernment and asking Him to just give it to me, because I trust you above all things, but I don't trust myself. So if you could just give me that. And I didn't realize, but it was a theme for about 2 years of asking for discernment. And I never have heard God's voice, but I have definitely felt pressing in on myself that I feel like this is from God. I'm not certain, but I feel like it is. And so that was a steady process for about 2 years, and I didn't realize it was a theme of my prayer. But looking back on it now, it definitely was. And, I will start the next video with the next part of my story.